Hi, this is Maciej from DCX, and this is a quick guide on how to start up the individual immersion mining enclosure combined with the ICP-40 integrated cooling and pumping unit with the capacity of 40 kilowatts. So let's start from the enclosure first. The enclosure was designed to fit specific number of miners. It was especially designed to fit the rack frame, container system, but also to house exact amount of the miners and to allow users to extract all the heat to the heat rejection device, which would be the ICP-40 or just standard dry cooler. Now the enclosure has frames or L-shaped frames in the front, which allow you to attach any component you may find. Here there is a switchgear box attached to the enclosure in the front, and it has all the power protection, so all the breakers, all the overcurrent protection. And we basically isolate the electric side and the hydraulic side. The enclosure will have all the cables, all the cabling from those dry coolers aggregated here on the switchgear box, and it will move with the enclosure, because you may start from the single enclosure system, but you might end up with the rack frame or immersion rack system, which and the enclosures are the building block for any standard or any scale-out solution. Now you can see it is positioned within the rack frame for the sake of convenience, and I will show you what's inside of the enclosure, what you get when you order those. The enclosure is delivered alone or with the ICP-40, so cooling pumping system, on the single Euro pallet. So you remove it from the pallet, you place the enclosure somewhere when it will be in the vicinity of 10 meters from the dry cooler. We deliver, or up to 15 meters, because we deliver the enclosure, the ICP-40 and the tubing with the maximum length of 15 meters. If you need more, then let us know. Now ICP-40 we will show how to start that in a moment, but let's start from the enclosure. The enclosure has a lid which protects the miners from any elements. We don't want any dust falling on the electric fluid. So and there are some components inside, and I will show you why we are using those. There is a base crate, and you can see that has C-shaped elements at the bottom, and we're using those to make the fluid more turbulent, to slow down the fluid flow, because the circulation goes like this. The enclosure has the inlet fitting at the bottom. This is the main chamber when all those miners are located here, and the fluid goes through the bottom and then goes through the miners and goes back to the outflow compartment or outflow chamber. So the fluid is that hot fluid is isolated from the other miners. And the crate which you saw at the bottom has all those components, and the fluid which goes into the enclosure hits those components, becomes slower and goes slower to the miners. This is what we want to have. So the fluid, so we have great delta T, great temperature difference between the inlet and outlet. It's 20 degrees Celsius. So if we are coming here into the enclosure with the 40 degrees Celsius, we are going out with the 60 or over 60 degrees, and this is what we aim for. So that enclosure will be also hot. Take that into the account when you locate it somewhere in the garage or in the cellar or anywhere. But make sure that there is also proper ventilation around, because that will be just hot, especially during the hot season, especially during the summer. Besides that base crate, besides that divider here, we have just one component which I need you to show, and this is the base plate. And this is something like this, and you can see there's a simple element. You can cut it into the pieces. You can divide it into the pieces, and that one with additional amount of the foam is used to isolate the flow around the miners. It may happen that you will start with just the small amount of miners, let's say for the first trials, 4 of them, 6 of them, 8 of them, and thus that part of the enclosures which is not occupied by the miners, you should use that plate, put on the bottom to force the fluid to go through the miners only. We will cover the positioning of the miners and all those components inside the enclosure in the other video, but for now just make sure that you have those all components placed correctly at the bottom. There's also dividing plate here, which you can see here, and you can see that it's divided by two parts, right? So you are able to, you know, wiggle it out, those components, just also basically break it, and that's for the different miners, because there are miners which will be having low height. I mean the, let's say, S9, S15, S17s, but there will be also watts miners and 20, or for example S19 ant miners. They are really beasts, they are really big, so we need to have the fluid level over them, like 2 centimeters over those miners. So you can regulate needed amount of the fluid with that dividing plate, and through that dividing plate the fluid should overflow to the outflow chamber. So this is how the enclosure works. That circulation is that whole circulation is a closed loop, so that the electric fluid which you put inside of the enclosure doesn't leave the enclosure at all. We have at the back, we have hydraulic components which exchange the heat, which circulated the fluid here, and exchange the heat with the external loop. So we can call it dual loop system. One, the electric loop inside of the enclosure, and other water-based, so water, glycol, water with additives loop on the between the enclosure and the heat rejection device, so the dry cooler on, or maybe our ICP40 integrated cooling pumping unit. So that basically covers the enclosure. I will just mention that the enclosure has also those loops here, which allow you for convenient routing of the cables. So you can, you know, add the zip ties here, and just make sure that all the cables within the enclosure then doesn't, you know, immersed too much into the hot fluid, but they are basically routed here. And in the front you can see there is a element which you can remove. You need some force because it has some small components when it's hosed, but if you will just use enough force, you are able also to wiggle it out and basically run all the tubing or the electric cabling to the electrical box. You can cut it and route all your power distribution here, and you are protected fully. So that covers basically the enclosure. There's a lid, and let's close that one. And let's move on to the ICP40, right? So ICP40, as you can see, is integrated cooling and pumping unit. And when I say integrated, it means that all the components which you need to circulate the fluid are positioned in the compartment here. This is hydraulic electrical compartment. We are pretty satisfied with that unit. That's a huge improvement over the previous one, because you will find the different kind of the dry coolers, but you will not find, besides our solution, so much powerful cooling and pumping unit integrated into the one nice combined package. It's actually very dense, but it provides a huge capacity of 40 kilowatts in the 35 degrees ambient air. So even if you are located in the hot region, you have hot summers. If you are locating it outside, ideally on the north side of the building, so you have less sun operating on that unit, or you may just use some kind of sunshade, just temporary sunshade, to just make sure that you have better cooling. So that unit has the two fans. Each fan takes 250 watts, so 500 watts altogether on the maximum power, because there will be also additional fan adaptive controllers here. So for example, right now during the cold season, when there is close to 0 degrees outside in most of the, let's say, Europe, for example, then you don't need to run those fans at the maximum speed, so it will be more convenient to run those. Now, those unit has a few components which I will show you, because besides that pretty housing, there are some components inside which I will cover in a moment. So let's look inside. You have a few components here, and you have all those, you know, small items added with the delivery. But for now. You have the circulation pump integrated here. This is first version of our ICP40. There will be more, the versions which will come into the market in the end of Q1 will be even more sophisticated, but that one is one of our first versions here. So the circulation pump here, integrated into the compartment. The head is aimed into the compartment of the dry cooler, so it's very properly cooled. One of the problems related to the running hot installation is that those pumps require also some kind of cooling, and they will run with up to 40 degrees outside. But with that unit, it may also run in the very uncommon but hot ambient air of 50 degrees or even more, because it's cooled by the same dry cooler which is cooling your system. So the pump has the capacity of 160 liters per minute. It's already preset on speed free, so works already on the maximum capacity. The other components are the manifolds. So this is the pump which is connected to the inlet manifold. The fluid goes through the pump, goes to the inlet manifolds, goes through the dry cooler system, and goes out to the fitting outside. And you can see that the inlet fitting is in the bottom, the outlet fitting is in the back, but in the versions you will be able to receive, both will be located at the bottom. So it allows us for the convenient tubing and very nice dense package. So you have the pump. You have the hydraulic fittings here, so valves here, and you have also the one-way valve here, which allows us to fill the unit very conveniently. It was not so in previously. And also we have just one more component which I need to show you. These are the air vents, so basically the air release valves. This unit you may release all the air from the system when you be adding the fluid inside. You'll be able to release the air from the system using both vents. There is a one and there is a second one. So both on the inlet manifold and outlet manifold. There will be another vent. And also the pump has the automatic venting procedure. So it will also may drip some water. It will release any air from the loop if there will be any. So very nice solution, very convenient for the user during the commissioning. Now there's also two switchgear. There are also two switchgear boxes, and now there are also two switchgear boxes, and there is one at the bottom, one at the top. So the first one from the right is powering, is starting up the whole system. So it's basically protecting all the components here. The second one powers up the pump. It should be started only when the system is fully filled with the water or water glycol mixture. So then we're starting the pump. And also there are two overcurrent protections, or two breakers for the dual fans. So each fan is separately controlled. So even if you will not have any adaptive fan controller, special fan controller, you can just regulate those units just starting just one fan if it's needed. Or during the very cold season, just the circulation through the system will do just fine. It will not require any specific any airflow or special airflow besides the standard one. So this basically covers all the main components of the unit, and let me now show you how to start up the system. So let's follow up on the filling procedure of the ICP40, how to start up the system, how to commission it. So you will need just one tool actually to do that, and which is the filling pump. So one of those units, which we deliver also with the package, as you can hear, it's full of water, and that unit will be connected to the one-way valve, which is used for the filling process. And along with that unit, you will have, with that pumping manual pump, pressure pump, you will have this one nipple. There is a half of inch. So you will connect it here for the valve. We don't care really about the very leak-proof connection because it's just temporary process. So it may, drip a little bit water, but it's completely fine. And as you can see, it's so much easier than with the previous version. We are not even, tighten it really because it's just for the fitting process. We don't require any, very special preparation. Now we connected those, but we need to also to connect the electrical side and the tubing side. All right. So you have the cable. We'll need to power up the system later. So I'll have some power here, and we are more or less fine to start the operation. As mentioned previously, that should be located with the vinicity of, let's say, up to 15 meters between the enclosure and the dry cooler. So the dry cooler must be standing outside, it must be standing in a horizontal position. It will not work when it will be vertical. And it's using water or water glycol mixture. So we are not running the let's say more expensive dielectric fluid here, but basically running typical water or water glycol mixture. What we use is we used demineralized water along with the anti-corrosion, anti-fungus, antibacteria fluids, which you should add. Since we are running on high temperatures, we are running on the 60 degrees incoming, 40 degrees outcoming from the dry cooler, so we don't expect much of the falling. But either less, anti-corrosion, anti-fungus, antibacterial fluid will be great. If you require more than needed, you can also use any, let's say, radiator fluid, which is used in the car industry. But you will get that with whole package. So water, demineralized, so treated water, just to make sure that we have clean water here. And let's connect the tubing. We will use one of those enclosures, all right? And along with the whole installation and everything, you will get the set of the tubing already delivered by us. And you'll get the tubing, you will get the clamps, GBS clamps. And all you need to do in preparation, you will need to cut the tubing. And observe this. This is very important for us so the tubing will be connected and cut in this straight manner. We don't know, we may not have any edges like here, so basically cut without any proper, not straight, so let's cut it straight, all right? And we are using cutting tools, so basically special cutters for hoses, but I'm using that one because this is what you will have probably locally available. So let's take it, let's cut it, and let's make sure that it's a straight cut. I will have some issues with that one, but that's just for the video. So you can adjust it. It's most important, so you will not have any mountains here. You will not have any edges which are not cooled. You may repeat that procedure. Of course, you will have 15 meters of those cables, so it's just fine for running the system. Now you take the clamp. And you connect those tubing here to the system. And this is, I will close the valve here for just a moment on that side. And you're connecting here one tubing. So bear with me. It's connected, right? I may find that what I'm gonna do, and that's also important. I will connect like this, having that screw here on that side. It would be easier for me to connect everything, or I can do that on the bottom. So these are some small things, but you need to remember that position is the best. So basically on the connection on the bottom. This is the inlet, right, for the enclosure. So this is where the pump is sucking all the water, goes through the dry cooler and comes back through that fitting. So let's take the rest of the hose. There are different ways to measure the distance, but for now we'll just use some of that just to make sure we have the proper connection. right? So the one hose, and let's cut it. It's not proper cut, but anyway, just for the sake, make sure that it's completely flush, completely straight. But for now, it will not be, because we don't want to extend the video. So this is the inlet. So that must interact with the outlet from the enclosure. The outlet on the enclosure is on the top. So this is the top fitting with the elbow, right? So observe this. Don't forget about the clamp as shown here. As you can see, I'm interacting with the elbow, so top fitting, and this is outlet from the enclosure. This is where the hot heat goes from the enclosure to the heat rejection device. And there will be another part of tubing I will need to connect on the other side. So I will use another C-clamp, another GPS clamp, and I will connect to that with the other bottom fitting. So this is bottom fitting on the enclosure. This is the inlet, all right? This is the inlet from the enclosure. So this is where the colder fluid from the dry cooler goes into the enclosure, all right? So let's put it here also. Some of the manual, you need to force it somehow, just a little bit. Connect it fully. So we added that tube, that hose here on the inlet to the brace plate heat exchanger integrated within the enclosure frame, and that should correspond with the outlet from the dry cooler. And I'm having easy task here because I am having both components besides me, but you need to take into the account that will be outside on the other side of the wall, and that should be inside of your house. Both components somewhere where you can control the environment. But there is a good practice. Just mark the tubing on both sides. When you pre-cut the tubing, you are sure that it's fine. Just mark the both ends of the tubing, making sure that this is correctly named. You're using just any marker or anything, just to make sure that this is the outlet from the enclosure, corresponds with the inlet of the dry cooler, and at the bottom of the enclosure you have the inlet, which is corresponding with the outlet of the dry cooler. So take that in mind, that you will need then to wander and probably run to check which house is that, which house is that. Now, GPS clamp here, GPS clamp there, connected. Now let's make sure that it's solid. I'm keeping it, holding it firmly, and that tool is great just to to connect everything, to make sure that it's correctly. Yeah, it will be just fine. And now on the enclosure side, and the other one. As you can see, it doesn't take too much time to connect everything. Usually our customers are doing that within, let's say, hour or two, right? No more than that. And that operation, all that connection, fitting and pressurizing doesn't require very special DIY skills or any other hydraulic experience. This is a simple thing to do for, let's say, everyone who is involved in the crypto mining process. So we have connected both the enclosure and the ICP40. Now we need to pressurize the system, add the water or any other additive here. So we have the pressure pump. It is connected. Probably you will be standing. You have that on the same level, but for now, for the sake of convenience, we elevated that dry cooler, which means that the dry cooler is the highest placed for the air release. And you may notice that if there will be enclosure inside and the dry cooler, usually the enclosure is a little bit lower than the dry cooler. So this would be the place when you will be releasing all the air from the system, or that point. If the enclosure will be higher, make sure that before the startup, you may lift the dry cooler a little bit, you may leave the dry cooler and make sure that the dry cooler is higher, so all the air will be released. The procedure is very simple, I mean, in terms of the pressurizing it. We connected that with the one-way valve. We can separately first pressurize and release the air from the dry cooler, and then we can open the valves and release open the valve, bottom valve, and release the air from the tubing and from the brazed plate heat exchanger. But for now, let's open the valves here. Yep. And let's pressurize the system. You will use a few containers of the treated water or demineralized water. Put it inside, so flushing that inside of the manual pump. Then you have two valves here. It's a very simple tool to start. Valve 1 and valve 2. Valve 1 should be open completely, so counterclockwise, completely open to the left. All right, and the valve 2 should be closed completely, so to the right, clockwise. All right, now I close it, and now I will pressurize the loop. So basically I will do it manually. It will take some time, but not too much. So I'm just using the lever and adding the fluid into the system. You will have the manifold here, which will allow you to check the current pressure. There is two arrows, and one will show the momentum pressure, just temporary pressure, and the other one will show the constant pressure within the system. So doing like this, and during the pressurization, you will add the anti-corrosion, antibacteria, fungus, and concentrate, and that's all you need to basically fill the whole system altogether. If there will be some dripping here, there will be some water flowing from here, basically some drips, it's completely fine. It's just temporary one-way connection. You can make that a little bit more. It doesn't really matter, right, for the operation. So let's assume you filled the whole system altogether. You should observe no more than 1 bar here. Doesn't require to put even more pressure. That's just fine. It will work just fine. After the whole pressurization of the system, when you will see 1 bar here, then you are basically opening valve number 2. So releasing the excess pressure here. You will release all the water from that connection point, and basically that's it. That's everything what you need. So the only thing which you need to do after you pressurize the system and you have 1 bar on the manometer of the manual pump is you need to remove the air from the unit. As mentioned, the pump is having the feature so it releases the excess air from the pump head, but you may need to remove also the air from the dry cooler system. You have 2 air release vents, one located here on the inlet manifold, and the second one, which is located here on the outlet manifold. All right, and you just need 1 key, the same which we are using for the rack. It's 5 millimeter. So for our US friends, we'll have that, and so you not need to look for it on the Amazon or something. And you just unscrew it, and you are hearing whether you see any air, whether you hear any air to be released from the system. You should hear just a little bit air of going out. You can hear the sucking sound, and after that, when you see that the water is dripping here, then you close the valve. So this is the usual venting as with any other hydraulic system, and the same procedure on that side. It may happen that after some time of the operation, especially when you are heated up the system and there's a hot water going through the system, you will need to perform that procedure again and again and again and control the unit after some time what's happening, maybe adding some pressure. You will check what's the pressure into the system when you will connect the manual pump, and you will also check it with the tubing, right? So you will feel whether the tubing is stiff enough, so it's full of water, or not, and you need to pressurize it a little bit. Also, when you're touching the tubing, you're touching the tubing and observing when the fluid is running through it, you can feel when there is a proper pressure. The same for the pump. You can feel and basically diagnose the pump, whether it's running properly or there is a vibration, and you just touch the component and you will know. Now let's start this from the electrical side, and that's the final process before starting the operation. So you have two switchgear boxes, one on the bottom, one on the top. So the one on the bottom is having the two breakers, one general on the right, general which works for the whole system, protects whole component, and the second one is powering the pump. So you can see that the pump is, and observe and feel that the pump is starting. The other one, the top one, has two breakers, both for the fans. So one for the pump 1, second on the fan 2. And this is what you need to power the system. This is how you can regulate if you don't have any active controller of speed of fans. You may also regulate the performance of the unit, powering just one fan instead of both. So these are the steps which you need to follow to start up the ICP-40 and connect it to the immersion mining enclosure. That beauty, that system will allow you to safely transport 40 kilowatt of heat from your operation and sustain the operation of 8 S19 miners or up to 15 of watts miners. That's the best set you can get on the market, and we are will be really satisfied having you as our customer. So stay tuned with us. There will be more information follows on our social channels, and we will show you how the immersion cooling system works. Cheers.